In terms of education around financial planning, men and women are not that different. What's different is women are roughly 20% more risk averse. And if you think about what that translates to in terms of investment decision making, compounded over a lifetime of working, that becomes material.
Chris, lovely to speak to you again, or to be speaking with you again.
Thank you.
Tell us a brief introduction to yourself, a bit about your role, and a bit about Sun Life.
Yeah, well, Sun Life is a Canadian leader in the insurance and wealth management space. We're also Canada's largest asset manager. So we touch about 85 million lives around the world. We have a purpose that isn't going to be too unfamiliar to those that are following sort of insurance companies, and it is to help our clients live healthier lives and to achieve lifetime financial security. I think what makes us a little bit different is ultimately what we're doing about that. And I was really excited to join Sun Life because of the collective capabilities we bring. We are also a very purpose-driven company. So my role really is a client and innovation role. What that really means is all things client-facing, whether it is how we communicate and present our brand to the client, to helping understand the client. What that means is deep insights and what we're really solving for, what are the client pain points, through to client satisfaction, client experience, digital satisfaction, digital experience, how we think about proposition development. I also have sustainability and reputation management in my function. So it's a very broad role, but it was intentionally constructed that way because that's sort of all the elements that touch the outside world. And I have the luxury of having a slightly longer term perspective as well. So I'm not dealing with a day-to-day P&L responsibility. And that's the nice balance that I can strike in terms of thinking long term for the client, but also balancing it with what our business needs.
That tees up your session later today quite well, actually, which links perfectly with the client part and the innovation part of your role. So we've called it the next generation of customer propositions based on improved customer understanding. So maybe to double click on that briefly, what are one or two bits of customer understanding that have emerged over the last couple of years, and what have you built off the back of that?
I actually think, Eric, that's probably the most fun bit of my role is I'm an actuary by training, so sort of analytics and data is sort of core to what we learn in school. But we're applying that in a very human sense. So we have something within our sustainability strategy called the Bridges Initiative, and that's really understanding underserved populations in the world. Now, people often think lower socioeconomic is underserved. Meanwhile, there's many different definitions of underserved. You could be extremely wealthy and still be underserved. So it's about understanding what pain points you have as an individual or as a human or as a family that is not being met. And that's where the really fun bit comes in. So for example, in Canada, we've been doing a lot of research, sort of how men and women think differently about financial literacy. So what we found is, in terms of education around financial planning, men and women are not that different. What's different is women are roughly 20% more risk averse. And if you think about what that translates to in terms of investment decision making, compounded over a lifetime of working, that becomes material in terms of compounded return differences. Then you think about how women are sort of intentionally, unintentionally, generally have their careers disrupted, whether it's taking maternity leave or unfortunately generally burdened with more caregiving responsibilities. And that affects their income earning capability, so that affects their lifetime financial security. Then you think about roughly 50% divorce rate in North America, and now you have a significant cohort of clients that could need a lot of advice that is differentiated. So now what we do with that is we think about training our advisors, we think about different profiles of advisors, we think about different content, and we think about actually how to engage and empower the individual to actually take control of their financial planning. So that's a small example of insight. The exact same applies to health, by the way. We're finding that younger women, sort of working women in the 25 to 45 age band, they have significantly higher levels of mental health concerns. And that translates into what we're doing around mental health support. And we know early intervention helps, but early intervention doesn't solve the problem. We found that just referring our clients to psychologists doesn't necessarily resolve anything, because the psychologists might be talking about very broad-based concerns. So what we found is actually having a targeted team of psychologists on staff that is deploying virtual consultations specifically targeted at what's causing you that stress and anxiety at work has been incredibly successful. So basically those are a couple of simple examples of how really understanding the client, what's driving their sort of stress or dissatisfaction in the moment, how we're then developing solutions to specifically target those friction points or pain points is leading to very measurable positive outcomes.
So very much in the delivery, as much in the delivery of the product as the product is.
Well, it needs to be end-to-end, but the first thing is really understanding what is the problem in the first instance. And oftentimes when you look at empirical data, it's not particularly clear. So it actually requires a pretty robust listening capability. I personally love small group sort of interview sessions, because you find that one little question that leads to an emotional response by one, and then everybody piles in, and you've got sort of a spark that is worthwhile digging into. You complement that with then sort of more robust sort of survey techniques, and you begin to build a thesis. So that's sort of been the approach we take, and it's gotten really industrialized at Sun Life, which is great to see.
Okay, let's take a step back on the innovation front. Generally, why should insurance push on innovation at all costs? Can't we just close the protection gap with what we have? Is it not just a matter of business development and manpower? Why do we need to keep doing things better and understanding customers better?
That's a heavy question, because really what you're touching on is human behavior, and although I truly believe in what we do as a business, and not to sort of keep bringing up the typo fires, but that's one of those events that sort of reminds us how protection is important, whether it is protecting your home against unexpected events like a fire, or protecting lives, whether it is ultimately your mortality or your injury and health. So ultimately, it doesn't matter how much money you have if you don't have your health, right? So I truly believe in what we do, and my greatest proof point to that is I bought my son his first life insurance policy when he was 1. He has multiple insurance policies because I never want him to worry about it, because I really believe in that role. Now the question then becomes, why don't more people feel the same way as I do? Out of the cuff, I would say, off the cuff, I'd say people have to understand the value of insurance, and the industry has to do a much better job explaining that in non-technical terms. We have a lot of technical language in our policy language and our marketing language, and that doesn't do us any favors as an industry. So I think that's something every company is grappling with, including Sun Life. 2 is enhancing the quality of advice, and not selling it on fear, but selling it on optimism and empowerment. But that is not the easiest thing to do when you're talking about a negative event. And then I think the true reality of our business is when it's easiest for a client to buy, which is when they're healthy and young, is when they've got other priorities. Whether it is I'm saving up to buy a home, or I'd rather go out with my mates on a Saturday night, as opposed to I have to deploy after-tax income on something that may or may not happen. So it is the very nature of sort of what we do. I think and this is also core in my role, sort of the marketing aspect of it, I think it's incumbent upon us as an industry to do a much better job humanizing financial planning. And that means, again, going back to the earlier question, understanding what we're solving for and making it relevant and understanding the target audience. So I'll give you a small example. The number one reason why Asian clients buy insurance is generally for their children, children's education. Now that's an easy thing to say, but if you really understand the driver, and by the way, it's very different for Hong Kong versus Indonesia. But if you understand the differences, then you might do a better job marketing the proposition. So in Indonesia, the concept of retirement income really doesn't exist. your retirement savings is your child taking care of you when you get old, and that's the expectation. So the whole sandwich generation concept is very real. The working level is taking care of aging parents, but also trying to make sure that kid has a better future. The point I'm making is understanding that means having the client understand a proper goals-based plan is going to make sure that their child's future is not compromised no matter what happens to them, right? Now that is one basic concept. If you then dial up the emotion and go, think about the stress you are currently undergoing. You've got, by the way, single child now applies China imposed in the past, or urban populations in Asia. We're seeing one child as a general kind of thematic. So you have 4 aging parents, 2 working adults, and 1 child. It's an upside down pyramid. I think about my own family situation. I've got an aging mother. She's got some level of dementia. I've got 2 siblings. Between us, we're trying to take care of her care. And that's hard enough. Imagine it's 2 working adults with 4 aging parents, everybody living longer. So that stress is just going to get more robust. So helping that individual understand how they can break the cycle of burden so that their child is not faced with the same stress as they currently might be living. And the way to break that sort of cycle is to save for yourself so that you're not reliant on your child in the future. Now, that's not going to be easy. That's going to take some time for an Indonesian middle-class individual to understand. But that has had much greater engagement that we've seen because people understand why they need to save and what it might mean to their future as well as their child's future. So again, I think it's probably way more than you were asking for. But it's actually the reason why the industry hasn't cracked this in decades is because it's a really difficult thing to explain. Right.
Okay, no, very, very well explained. So tough problem requires new approaches, and one of the solutions there might be at the crux of it. How do we move to defined contribution as opposed to the defined benefit? Is maybe a good way to summarize. What about more broadly at Sun Life? What do you tell your team to look out for? How to, for example, approach innovation in the day-to-day, whether it's for an internal workflow or a customer-facing proposition? What are the guiding principles of innovation at Sun Life?
Well, the interesting thing is it cannot just be fragmented innovation. Let me clarify that. We do want innovation ideas to come from, ideally, all 40,000 of our colleagues. But you and I both know if 10 ideas come from 40,000 people, you can't implement 400,000 ideas. So that doesn't quite work. But we want our frontline to feed back sort of what they're seeing and hearing from their clients and orchestrate that into some area of focus. Mm-hmm. So we do have some defined areas that we are working on specifically. So in the health space, diabetes is a big one. If I think about the region that we're in, and it was a Malaysian newspaper that published this, I'm not going to take credit for the data, but Malaysia, for the 25 to 65 cohort, I think they have crossed 20% type 2 diabetic, which is extremely high, right? I think Singapore has crossed 12, which is quite a high number. North America is sitting around 10. Now you might go, why is diabetes important? Because the comorbidity risk of diabetes into heart attack, cancer, stroke, and other vascular diseases is incredibly high. So we did a study of our sort of cardiovascular claims looking backwards, and over 80% had elevated blood sugar. So you can't deny the correlation of elevated blood sugar, type 2 diabetes, and other chronic diseases. So we've been trying to work on solutions to help people change their lifestyle and educate and empower them to make the right decisions in order to stem or reverse that sort of trend. So diabetes is a big one. We have a lot of respiratory disease in Canada. So if you're living in Western Canada, there's forest fires every single year. How do we help those with asthma and other respiratory complications manage their health? So that is another big area of focus. The last one is mental health. Number one cause of disability in North America is mental health related, stress, anxiety, depression. Again, that's a big area of focus on the health side. And then as it relates to the wealth and retirement side, a lot of it is understanding, on the one hand, how do we build capabilities to actually give you dependable returns for your retirement? That's more the asset management side of innovation. But then how we structure products and how we do financial literacy engagement is actually a big, big part of how we're thinking about it. So now that's a broad array, but that is 5 main thematics that we're really focused on in order to focus on our purpose and drive innovation that's going to have measurable, practical outcomes.
Okay, so that's a good framework for pulling together the thousands or tens of thousands of observations and opinions, centralizing them on the core. So it's more of a framework or an organizational thing than it is necessarily a set of tech solutions or
tech is critical in enabling it. Clearly, we're seeing tools that will help us do things quickly, more efficiently. The ability for us to process huge amounts of data that might be more unstructured than what we would like, that's where Gen AI is going to be really useful. But in terms of, I don't think at the moment, there's no bypass to having the human focus on understanding and refining the problem statement in terms of what we're solving for the client.
That probably leads nicely into, let's wrap up on a forward-looking, optimistic question. What are you most excited about for 2026? Either something you're working on or the broader Sun Life team is working on.
I will answer for Sun Life. I think the luxury of touching millions of clients and the ability to live our purpose and truly deliver solutions that are going to add value. And that comes in many forms. We do have, I think, a phenomenal mental health plus solution that is delivered virtually. So we own Canada's leading virtual healthcare company called Dialogue. It's got multiple sort of solutions, but the one that I'm referring to specifically is called Mental Health Plus. And that has been proven with third-party audited data to potentially shorten absence by about 30%. That's not just good for the employer, because absence management is a big, it's really difficult for HR departments to manage. But more importantly, it gets the individual back to productive life. And we are proving a thesis of effective early intervention delivered in the right way, targeted, is leading to positive, measurable outcomes. And that's really exciting. We continue to work on our diabetes care program. This is our #1 philanthropic initiative. And it's everything from sort of youth education around sort of the importance of healthy activity and diet, all the way through to actually leveraging continuous glucose monitoring to help the individual understand what's the physiological reaction to the decisions they're making, based on what they're eating, based on the level of activity, and so on and so forth. And when you bring that all together in an engaging digital solution, the individual can then make a decision that is suitable for them on what they can do to actually change their health outcome. So there's a number of these things. Also, we have, I truly think, we have sort of phenomenal asset management capability that allows us to structure wealth solutions that meet a very wide cross-section of our clients in terms of what their financial literacy level is, what is their risk appetite, and they rely on us to kind of frame up asset allocation solutions on their behalf so they can then invest appropriately to meet their retirement goals. So all that kind of frames up. So in a nutshell, really what I'm saying is innovation has to be supported by true capability and by a real deep insight in terms of what we're solving for. And I think collectively across Sun Life, we've got a lot of the elements to really make a difference.
Brilliant. In other words, exciting projects on each of those pillars, working towards the Sun Life purpose or mission. Best of luck on all of them, and we'll catch up in a year or so on some wins, some KPIs that have moved in the right directions, some customer success stories. But all the best in 2026.
Brilliant. Thank you, Eric.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.